In this video, I want to talk to you today about Maslow's hierarchy. Now, I mentioned that in an earlier lesson that there's going to be several different models that we're going to talk about. And really, like I said, these are models. Maslow's hierarchy is put out by Maslow, and it's a modern version of our basic needs. It's nothing too deep or in-depth. It's just when it's presented, it really helps you think of the way many people will perceive life. For certain things that we have needs of, and that's what it's called. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's just a representation of human needs, but it's presented in a pyramidal structure in order of importance. And it's important that we understand what these needs are because, as I mentioned in earlier lessons, those are things that we sometimes are in conflict with. You know, as we sit here and do this, I mean, I'm a prime example, as we have a desire to maybe build a business, but you've got to get from point A and get your business going before you can leave the other. But you still have to have needs. And that's what we're going to talk about, those needs, because in all honesty, as we move on in and discover this from a biblical perspective, you will see that these needs, strange as this is going to sound, but are used as weapons against us in this conflict and in this battle that we're in. But we'll discuss more about that later. Right now, I just want this particular lesson to focus on what Maslow's hierarchy is and how it relates to our modern day life. You know, how we live, what we need, those types of things. So let's take a look at it here. And like I said, it's just an illustration that identifies the needs of human life and puts them in an order of importance. We'll see, according to this right here, we have at the bottom, down here, we have just the physiological. And that's going to be at the bottom of our pyramid. And we all know we need food, we need water, we need air, we need sleep. Sex falls into play because that is our method of reproduction as a human race. Homeostasis is that feeling that things are there. In other words, you hear people say, well, sometimes people don't know where their next meal's coming from. It's almost like food security. And believe it or not, physiological, they throw excretion in there. I guess our body does have to be able to eliminate waste, and if it can't, you can be very uncomfortable, and that can lead to sepsis and death, I would assume, on that part. So you can see the very physiological part down at the bottom. Pretty much nothing to disagree with right there, but it is our body. Our body is our physiological needs. Next up the line, I kind of skipped a slide there, but it is the most basic needs. Without things we can't exist. Now let's look at safety and security. That's our next level up. And we can define elements on this level based on how the effect of losing access to them might affect an individual. Okay, security of the body. Okay, that's the first thing listed there under safety and security. Well, if you feel threatened, if you're threatened at home, if you're living in an unsafe environment, if somebody's living on the street, you know, and you're not in a safe neighborhood, maybe you're living in an abusive situation, so that's a next level up. I mean, you have to have food, water, air, sleep, those type of things, but then your next level up would be your safety of the body, protecting you from physical harm. What about safety of employment? A lot of people get very stressed if they're losing their job, if they don't have income security, is basically what that is relating to. What are you going to do for a job? How are you going to get money to feed your family? And see, that's where that safety of your employment, job security, affects your physiological, because you need the food, the air, the water. You need those things. But again, we're talking about safety and security. The physical harm is what we're really discussing there. But you can see how threatening somebody physically would definitely be a negative, or how that can be used against you. before we go to there, let's go back to employment. People's jobs are threatened. That's why if you don't do what your boss says, and which you should, I mean, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times in many situations, people are threatened. Along those lines. They take away resources. I've heard it said from a particular politician that food is a weapon. And that's just amazing to even think of. But this particular politician made this statement that food is a weapon. You know, United States, we do give aid and food and, you know, to all these different countries when we have hungry people here in our own country. That's another story. But you can definitely see where that comes from. What about safety of morality? Now, morality is interesting because morality can be our own interpersonal rules of what is right and wrong. Now, this one's very interesting during this time this year. We're in December of 2020, getting ready to go into 21. And morality, believe it or not, is very big right now because what some people are calling moral, some people are calling a hate crime. You know, if you act a certain way because it's within your, I'll use the word religious realm of the way to treat people with courtesy and respect and those types of things, that's your morality. Other people are calling it hate crime because it doesn't fit their definition or their morality. And there's definitely more to that battle than just that. But I think you understand my point. What about safety of the family? Well, that's obviously nobody wants their family to be in an unsafe environment. That creates stress. Another one is health and property. Oops, typo. Health and property. We want to be healthy. We want access to doctors. We want access to good health care. And we want to be able to live in our home without the burden. So you can see those types of things and how they play upon that next level. And that's kind of the foundation of life. Food, water, air, safety, security. You can see how one builds upon another. So let's step up one more time and let's look at love and belonging. Okay, now this level begins to move out of the physical aspects of the preservation of life, and it begins to showcase a more relational or intimate part of life. We're starting to move in toward internals here. And remember I mentioned in an earlier lesson here that we were talking about looking at this from the outside in and inside out. Now we're also looking at it from a physical or to a emotional or internal, if you will. But love and belongings is where we get our friendships. We get family. We get intimacy in relationships. There's an old saying, you know, birds of a feather flock together. Why is that? Because if we're on the same level as far as our physiological and safety, then we're going to be able to relate to those around us. So people tend to huddle into groups, relationships with like-minded or people in similar situations. Why is that? Because we don't want to feel less than somebody else. We don't want to feel, and we'll see that with the next level, with the esteem. But that's where that comes from. It's a relatability. But we all want to be loved. We all want to have friendships, relationships. We're built for relationships, not only with each other, but with our Creator, as I've already alluded to. Well, again, we'll talk more about that later. Now, the next level is esteem and self-esteem. Now, this level is where we begin to define ourselves. We, you know, a lot of, let me say it this way, out there in our world today, you're seeing a lot of people who have low self-esteem. That seems to be the way that people are pushing a lot of books and tapes and courses, forgive me, on why there's low self-esteem. People don't have any self-esteem, which is confidence, achievement, respect of others, and respect by others. We want to feel as if we have accomplished something. We want to feel that confidence. We want to have those types of things so that we can stand up in the face of enemies, or maybe not enemies, but in the face of people who disagree and say, well, listen, this is why I did this, or this is why I believe this. And that is because it will affect your physiological, my safety, my relationships, and this is who I am. So we begin to define ourselves with our esteem or self-esteem. It's where we get our confidence. And we get our confidence based on our achievements. Okay? From those achievements, we get respect of others because we've conquered certain things. And we get respect by others. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. Maybe sword's not the right word to use on that one, but you can see how that plays a part. Who wants to be at the end of their life cycle and go, what did I accomplish? And I didn't do anything. We want to be able to stand and say, I did this. It is about I, though. That's the key part. It's called self-esteem. And when we look at this from the inside-out approach, you're going to see something a little different. This is, remember I said earlier in another video, this is where we begin to define who we are. Not necessarily whose we are, but who we are begins to develop. And self-actualization. Now, this level is where we consciously choose who we are. Now, we understand that the world around us can be different if we choose to create it. Okay, so we begin to identify ourselves by our choices. As we mentioned earlier, morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudices. Understand that, lack of prejudices, and acceptance of facts. Now, self-actualization is the top of the rung. That's where our internalization of who we are comes to fruition. And notice the characteristics of self-actualization. Acceptance of facts. Wow, facts. Does that play a part in our world today? Like I said, it's 2020. We've got the election going on. We've got COVID-19 going on. We've got the battle with the news media, people trying to figure out what's truth, what's a lie. There's two different sections, if you will, two different schools of thought on what's fact. We've got all the fact checkers on social media, but are they backing up their facts with the fact? No, they just tell you that it's not true, but then they don't even cite their own articles, and a lot of times. But, so you can see how that plays in. Who is right? Who's wrong? What's the truth? And that's very, very important, because what we accept as truth will define our world. If you were told you would never amount to nothing, and you self-actualize that, then you're going to have a low self-esteem. You're not going to feel loved by others. Your safety, and that possibly could affect your economic system, which could put you in an area to where you don't feel safe, you don't feel secure, you don't feel comfortable in your job. That would affect your resources, your food, your water, those types of things. Relationships, your ability to reproduce with your others. It all connects, but Maslow puts it in a hierarchy. Let's go back to spontaneity and problem solving. Spontaneity and problem solving is your ability to understand, hey, okay, I've got this problem. I've got to solve it. And so we can think on our feet, we have confidence in knowing who we are, and we can get the job done. And you've probably seen this in movies. I'll get it done. I'll get the job done. You got to trust me. I will do that. Those are people who have, or who are characters, if you will, in a movie that's displaying that problem-solving type of thing. But that's that spontaneity, problem solving. That's also where you get creativity, because your creativity is flowing out of who you are. And the reason you can be who you are is because you're not trapped by those lower rungs. You've got food, you've got safety, you feel loved, you feel belonging, therefore you can do other things. You get that creativity. But all that focuses around morality, and that is living within moral guidelines. And those moral guidelines are things that, if we do something that we internalize that we think is immoral, then we're going to feel guilt. We're going to feel convicted in our spirit. We're going to feel just different, and we will begin to see Maslow's hierarchy begin to fall away, because you can't live in guilt and have high confidence. You see what I'm saying? You can't have a high self-esteem and confidence in yourself if you know something within yourself that you've done is wrong. Now, biblically, we'll talk about that as sin, but that's a whole other issue. But we do have a level of morality, and I believe that's ingrained in all of us. But a lot of times that morality is in conflict with our outside world. So, and the reason I skipped this other one back over here is lack of prejudices. Now, why is that on the self-actualization part? I found that one to be interesting, because in our world today, people are being accused of being prejudices over different things. A lot of skin color issues, a lot of racial issues. Excuse me. So with that, when you understand from a morality perspective, what I'm calling a biblical perspective, that God is no respecter of person, okay, and then in that the end time, that people of all tongues, tribes, and nations are there in heaven. It's a number which no man could number. And you understand that God is not a respecter of person, the racial issue falls apart. Because you cannot be, from a biblical perspective, have a morality that lines up with Scripture and have racial problems at the same time. Those two are in conflict. And I think that that's one of the things, and I'm using prejudices based on a racial issue to prove a point, is that those two don't line up. When you understand and self-actualize whose you are, you will understand the plight of every other man, woman, child out there, that they want to come to the reality of who they are. And when we do that, the whole world can change, because we see each other as a brother, as a sister, as a friend. See, and now I'm starting to work on the outside in, or the inside out, but that's Maslow's hierarchy. It goes from the physiological upward. But as we'll see in our next video, we're going to look inward and outward. So in conclusion, the illustration is significant in its apparent order of things. Okay, the model does not illustrate the relationship that exists within the structure itself. In other words, it's not a linear progression. They do relate. They do relate to each other, and and you have to have food, water, sleep, those types of things. You do have to have those physiological things before love and belonging actually happens. So there is an order, but it's just a relationship. It's not like I've got to get all of this, and then I get this, and then I get this. You kind of build upon each other. In other words, if somebody is at the bottom and they get a good job and they now have that security, well, then they're going to begin to really understand their self-esteem and their confidence in their achievements, bypassing the love and the belonging. But once they have that confidence, then they'll be able to develop relationships and intimacy. So they really all kind of grow together. And that's what I don't like about this model, is that it really doesn't show that relationship one within the other and how all of that works. We'll see in the later video. Like I said, this is an outside, inward-looking video. But I just wanted you to see that. I wanted you to definitely look at Maslow's hierarchy, because this is how modern psychology kind of puts things into this diagram, into this box. And I just wanted you to have a foundation, so when you begin to examine your own self, then we can put together where we're missing pieces of the puzzle and what we can do to remedy it and go forward. So with that, I'm going to leave this. A couple videos you want to watch if you haven't seen them, because they all tie into this section. It will be in a new lesson. It's called the layering model. And then I've got one of my own creation that shows how we are created. So you definitely want to see those three in understanding who we are, how we're put together, how we work mentally, how we work physically. So with that, thank you very much. I'm going to take this video and upload it into your lesson. If you have any questions, remember we will have the group, or you can ask questions on this. We can have discussions. I will turn the discussions on for this lesson so you can ask more details about what's going on. So with that, thank you very much. This is Kevin Wilson with the Moriah Center saying God bless you, and we'll talk again soon.